I sensed and knew this day was coming, and I had a pit in my stomach that it would. It just is, when it happens, it's real.
It's been a 6-year process to investigate and attempt to hold state and city leaders accountable in the eyes of the law for what happened to Flint's drinking water system. Mid-Michigan Now anchor Stephanie Parkinson spoke exclusively with the lawyer who led the first investigation into who was responsible for contaminating the city's water with lead and a Legionnaire's outbreak.
You know, I did have that conversation with him. It's been actually 3 years since Todd Flood was removed from his post as Special Prosecutor on the Flint water crisis investigation with the Attorney General's office. But he says it doesn't change how much this development today from the state's high court eats at him.
After pouring my life into it, along with my family's life into it, it was hard. It's hard.
In 2016, Todd Flood was brought in by former Republican Attorney General Bill Schuette to lead the first Flint water crisis investigation. For years, he fought in court. 7 of the 15 people charged in Flood's investigation pleaded no contest to misdemeanors. But former MDHHS Director Nick Lyon and former Chief Medical Officer Eden Wells, both facing manslaughter charges at the time in connection with the deadly Legionnaire's outbreak, had been bound over to circuit court for trial.
The cases would have been already decided.
Flood tells me he confidently believes if he hadn't been removed and his cases dropped in 2019, justice would have been served by now for the people of Flint.
We've already would have had decisions by jurors or judges already done. The cases would have been closed by now.
Transparency and following due process is why Flood says that would have happened had he had the chance to finish what he started.
There was a map of following the facts and building the blocks up from the bottom up. Had plenty of plea deals that we were working through with cooperation agreements.
Flood may not be on the case, but does tell me he wants people held accountable. Many of the charges issued in January of 2021 through a one-man grand jury under the new investigative team from the state attorney general are similar to what Flood was prosecuting. But he tells me he sees why the Michigan Supreme Court issued this opinion, saying these former state and local leaders should never have been charged through a one-man grand jury.
I'm not shocked by the opinion. I actually understand it and agree with it.
Now, the charges that were brought forward in the Flint water crisis investigation when Todd Flood was leading that investigation, those were dropped in 2019. Now, these new charges that came about in 2021, although the state Supreme Court issued the opinion today that the 9 people charged in this water crisis case now will still need to go before a judge to formally remove those charges, as Courtney explained, based on this opinion. The question now, though, remains, will anyone be able to be criminally charged in connection to Flint's water crisis? Dave?
Thank you, Stephanie. Michigan Solicitor General Fadwa Hammoud, it seems confident justice will be served. Now, in 2019, she dropped initial charges in 8 pending cases and said the investigation would start over. Tonight, she says, quote, the citizens of Flint should know that these cases are not over. Public commentary to the contrary is presumptive and rash. She goes on to say, our reading is that the court's opinion interprets the one-man grand jury process to require charges to be filed at the district court and include a preliminary examination.
Say, well, we don't want to see another Flint. Well, if you don't want to see another Flint, number one, fix Flint.
Continuing our coverage of the Flint water crisis and a judge's ruling to dismiss 7 defendants of all criminal charges. The Flint water prosecution team releasing a statement today saying it may not be the end of legal action that they are pursuing against those 7 people. You see them right here on your screen. Our Mid-Michigan Now reporter, Alexis Ware, joins us after talking with attorneys and community activists about this statement. Alexis.
Dave, well, the most important people affected in this and how these cases play out are the residents of the city of Flint. And after speaking with some of those residents today, they tell me they aren't confident in anything the prosecution team is saying at this point, and they're relying on the governor and the AG to step in.
Worthy saying that we may be able to get them with a new preliminary exam. Do you have any faith that that's going to bring any justice?
We have no faith, but they should pursue whatever they got to pursue, because we cannot recover from this crisis.
That's what Kim Worthy, the Flint water prosecution team, says they're looking into.
It is our belief that we can still proceed by way of preliminary examination.
While they're still working through the technicalities, the prosecution team believes they can continue with charging these 7 defendants who just recently had their criminal charges dismissed just a day prior.
Well, as a result of the grand jury, they have been tendered the information from the grand jury. So they do have millions of pages of discovery already.
Judge Elizabeth Kelly says the cases were thrown out because of invalid indictments, not necessarily because of lack of evidence. According to Chip Chamberlain, the attorney for Nick Lyon, one of the 7 who were facing criminal charges, a new preliminary exam is not going to happen.
No basis to proceed with this case at this point. And the prelim isn't the answer. There's no basis for the charges. It's misleading to say that this was merely a grand jury issue because, we have good arguments on the merits and they know it.
We are not afraid of the merits.
When it comes down to it, Kim Worthy says it's about giving Flint residents the justice they deserve, but residents say they need more than just words.
Don't just tell us, well, we're going to try it again. No. What is your plan to bring justice and accountability to the residents of Flint?
Defenders over Ad Willie and Chamberlain say they believe the fight for their client, Nick Lyon, is over.
We just hope that whatever their fight is for the people of Flint, it doesn't involve charging Nick Lyon with a crime.
It's been 3,084 days since the start of the Flint water crisis and counting, and if we give up now, they win.
City of Flint residents and activists like Melissa Mays have been waiting for some form of justice after the Flint water crisis since 2015. And nearly a decade later, they're receiving word that 7 of the people who were facing criminal charges for what happened are having those charges dismissed.
I'm disappointed. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but no, I'm not. The issue in this case was about criminal charges, felonies and misdemeanors and negligence. I have not seen anybody suffer the consequences of that other than the residents of Flint and the people who work in Flint.
That's all according to Dr. Lawrence Reynolds, a pediatrician in Flint during the height of the water crisis. Tuesday, Judge Elizabeth Kelly made the decision citing the indictments against the 7 defendants were invalid and the charging process was void. Flint community members say it's because of the leadership heading this process that people in Flint aren't receiving any justice.
We didn't lose in court because, because of the crimes that were done. We didn't lose in a legal battle that way. We lost because the Attorney General's office could not get anything procedurally correct.
Basically, Democrat, Republican, doesn't make any difference. They're all stuck together and looking out for each other instead of the people.
That's according to Vicki Marks, a lifelong Flint resident and survivor of the Flint water crisis. But not everyone has lost hope in the judicial process.
It's not over, and it's up to our state attorney general and her special prosecutors to do the next step.
Not everyone is hopeful that the remaining people, including former Governor Rick Snyder and former Flint Public Works Director Howard Croft, will face charges following Tuesday's decision. But Flint community members say they are promising to continue to fight for justice they deserve.
We're not a disposable people, but you're trying to tell us that we are and that we need to be quiet and, continue to buy our bottled water and try to survive the best we can, or just be happy with our poison, because at least they did something. Well, that something is not good enough.